Elena Martinez was a respected teacher. Jake Coleman was her teenage daughter's charming boyfriend. Sophia Martinez thought she knew them both, until one of them vanished without a trace, and the other returned home with a secret buried deeper than anyone could imagine. What really happened the night they disappeared into the woods together? And how far would a mother go to protect a forbidden love? The Martinez family lived in a quiet neighborhood where every house looked just as neat and orderly as theirs. From the outside, their home was picture-perfect: freshly painted walls, a small garden full of blooming flowers, and a warm porch light that welcomed visitors each evening. Elena Martinez, the mother, was known to be kind and generous, a school teacher who had dedicated her life to helping children learn and grow. Her husband, Carlos, was a successful businessman who worked long hours, providing well for the family but often coming home tired and distracted. Their daughter Sophia, 16 years old, was the pride of the neighborhood, smart, friendly, and full of youthful dreams. She had just started dating Jake, a boy from her school, and everyone agreed that they seemed perfect for each other. Neighbors often stopped by to comment on how close the family appeared. Elena would smile politely, Carlos would nod, and Sophia would beam with the happiness that comes from feeling loved and protected. Yet beneath the surface, something was not quite right. Elena often found herself standing by the window late at night, staring out into the darkness as if waiting for something or someone. There was a restlessness in her eyes that no one could explain. It was a strange feeling, almost like a secret tugging at her heart, but Elena refused to acknowledge it. She told herself it was just the loneliness creeping in. Carlos was always busy with work, and Sophia was growing up fast, spending more time with friends and less at home. The quiet nights stretched longer, and Elena's thoughts wandered to places she never expected. Jake, Sophia's boyfriend, was a regular visitor to the house. He was charming in a way that made people feel comfortable around him, always polite and careful with his words. Sophia adored him, and Carlos welcomed him without hesitation. But Elena noticed things no one else did. The way Jake looked at her sometimes, lingering just a moment too long. The way their eyes met briefly at family dinners before quickly turning away. She told herself it was nothing, just a trick of her imagination. After all, Jake was Sophia's boyfriend, and she was a mother who only wanted the best for her daughter. Still, those fleeting moments planted a seed of curiosity that grew inside her. Elena found herself thinking about Jake more often than she should. She noticed the way he laughed, the way he listened intently when she spoke, and a strange sense of connection that seemed to pull them closer, even though they both tried to keep it hidden. It was as if there was an invisible thread tying them together, a secret neither dared to speak aloud. The days passed, and the tension inside the house became harder to ignore. Elena's smile grew more forced, her eyes darting away when Sophia mentioned plans with Jake. Carlos, too, sensed the change but chalked it up to the usual stresses of family life. No one suspected the real cause, that Elena was slowly falling into a dangerous emotional trap. One evening, when Carlos was away on a business trip, Elena and Jake found themselves alone in the living room. The air between them felt charged with something neither wanted to admit. A simple conversation about Sophia's school project turned into long discussions about dreams, regrets, and loneliness. It was the kind of conversation that breaks the usual boundaries and makes people feel understood in ways they never expected. That night, Elena went to bed feeling a mix of excitement and guilt. Her heart was pounding, and her mind raced with questions she dared not ask. What was happening between her and Jake? Was this just a harmless connection, or was it something more? Could it possibly change everything she thought she knew about her family? Unseen by anyone, the cracks in the Martinez family began to form. What seemed like small moments of tension were actually the first signs of a storm that would soon shatter their lives completely. Elena's secret attraction to Jake was no longer a whisper in her mind. It was becoming a dangerous obsession, one that would lead them all down a path none could escape. And as the night grew darker, a chilling truth hung silently in the air. The perfect family image was about to be destroyed from within, by a secret so shocking no one could have imagined. Elena tried to push the strange feelings aside, but the secret attraction she felt toward Jake became harder to ignore with each passing day. What had started as simple moments of shared laughter or a glance here and there soon deepened into something more intense and unsettling. Jake was spending more time at their house, sometimes staying later than usual under the excuse of helping Sophia with schoolwork, but Elena noticed the way his presence lingered, the way their eyes met briefly when they thought no one was watching. Late at night, Elena's phone would buzz quietly in the dark. Messages from Jake appeared innocent enough on the surface, discussing mundane things like homework or weekend plans, but beneath the words, there was an undeniable tension. The messages grew more frequent and personal, hinting at feelings neither of them dared to admit openly. Elena would put down the phone with a racing heart, torn between guilt and excitement. She was a mother, a wife, a respected teacher, but inside, something wild and dangerous was awakening. Every day brought new moments where their worlds seemed to collide in secret, a touch that lasted too long when passing by in the kitchen, a smile exchanged across the room during family dinners. Elena tried to convince herself these were just coincidences, but deep down she knew better. She was playing with fire, and Jake was the spark that threatened to burn everything to ashes. Sophia remained unaware, completely trusting her boyfriend and her mother. She spoke openly about their relationship, sharing stories of their time together, laughing about silly jokes only they understood. Carlos, busy with his work, and tired from long hours, missed the subtle changes in Elena's behavior. Her usual warmth had shifted to a quiet, distant mood. At times, Elena seemed distracted, lost in thought, and sometimes her eyes held a secret sadness that no one could explain. The tension built in the house was like a silent storm gathering strength. Elena knew she should stop, but the magnetic pull toward Jake was stronger than her sense of right and wrong. The affair, still unspoken, was a dangerous game of shadows and hidden glances. Each secret meeting left her breathless and more entangled in the lies she was weaving. Elena started meeting Jake outside the house, away from prying eyes. They chose quiet places, parks after dark, empty benches near the edge of town, where their whispered conversations could go unnoticed. The thrill of secrecy made each encounter more intense. Elena felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, but the excitement came with a heavy weight of fear. What if Sophia found out? What would Carlos say? The thought of their world collapsing was terrifying, but somehow that fear only drew her closer to Jake. As their meetings grew more frequent, Elena's carefully constructed facade began to crack. Her phone was always close, her heart racing with every message notification. At times she caught herself staring at the screen, imagining what Jake might say next. She felt trapped between two worlds, one where she was a devoted mother and wife, and the other where she was a woman desperate for attention and affection. What neither Elena nor Jake fully understood was how dangerous their secret affair had become. Their passion was no longer just a hidden thrill, it was a spark that could ignite destruction. The balance of the Martinez family, fragile as it was tipping toward disaster. One afternoon, Elena caught a glimpse of Sophia's phone. The screen lit up with Jake's name, and for a moment, Elena froze. The realization hit her like a punch. Every message Jake sent to her was a betrayal of Sophia's trust. The daughter she loved was unknowingly being hurt by the very person she cared for most. Elena's guilt deepened, but the pull of the affair was too strong to resist. With every stolen moment, the danger grew. Elena knew she was risking everything, her family, her reputation, even her freedom, but the secret connection with Jake held her captive. It was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode and destroy the life they all thought they knew. In the quiet corners of the night, Elena whispered a silent warning to herself. This could not continue, but deep down she feared the truth more than the consequence. The secret affair was no longer just a dangerous temptation, it was a shadow that threatened to consume them all. The morning Jake disappeared started like any other, with the soft hum of routine filling the Martinez household. Elena was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen preparing breakfast. Sophia was supposed to meet Jake at school before heading to class together, but by mid-morning, there was no sign of him. Sophia's cheerful text to Jake went unanswered, and her worried calls went straight to voicemail. At first Elena tried to convince herself that Jake was simply caught up in something, a family emergency, a late bus, or a forgotten appointment, but as hours stretched into an entire day, the unease in the house grew heavier. Sophia's confusion turned to panic. She retraced their last conversations, desperately searching for any hint of where Jake might have gone. Elena noticed the way Sophia's eyes lost their usual sparkle, replaced by a growing fear that something was terribly wrong. Carlos too sensed the change, his casual questions becoming more pointed as the day wore on. Despite the calm exterior, Elena tried to maintain. Inside she felt a storm raging, guilt mixed with anxiety, fear tangled with something darker she refused to name. Neighbors whispered about the strange silence coming from the Martinez home. It was unusual for Jake not to check in or come home after school, especially since Sophia was so devoted to him. The missing boy's disappearance was soon reported to the police, sparking an investigation that quickly gathered attention. Officers knocked on doors, searched local hangouts and questioned friends, but no one seemed to know where Jake had gone or why he had vanished without warning. The police began to focus on the last place Jake had been seen, the Martinez home. Elena answered their questions carefully, her voice steady but her hands trembling. She insisted she had no idea where Jake was or why he had left without telling anyone. Carlos watched her closely, noticing a flicker of something she tried to hide, a hesitation that didn't go unnoticed. Sophia clung to hope, refusing to believe that Jake had simply disappeared. She wanted to believe he would come back, but the silence stretched longer, growing heavier with each passing day. Late one evening, as the investigation deepened, a discovery shocked everyone. A local hiker found a small cabin on the edge of town, tucked away in the woods, a place rarely visited and perfect for secrets to be kept hidden. Police searched the cabin and found signs that someone had been there recently. Among the scattered belongings, they uncovered Jake's wallet and a few personal items, but there was no sign of him. Elena's calm demeanor began to crack under the weight of the revelation. As news of the cabin spread, whispers began circulating about what might have happened between Jake and Elena. Rumors grew like wildfire, painting pictures of secret meetings and hidden motives. The neighbors who once admired the Martinez family now watched with suspicion and unease. Elena's carefully maintained image was unraveling, and Carlos's doubt turned into quiet resentment. Sophia, overwhelmed by heartbreak and confusion, struggled to understand how the boy she loved could disappear so mysteriously. The police soon uncovered surveillance footage from a nearby gas station, showing Jake and Elena arriving at the cabin together late one night. The footage was grainy, but the evidence was clear. They had been there alone. What no one expected was that only Elena was seen leaving the cabin the next morning. Jake was nowhere to be found. This discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation, turning it from a missing persons case into something far more sinister. Elena's silence grew louder with every question she refused to answer. The community's whispers turned into accusations, and the once close-knit family found itself isolated and broken. Carlos confronted Elena in private, demanding the truth she seemed determined to hide, but Elena only shook her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and something darker, regret, perhaps, or guilt. With every passing hour, the mystery deepened. Where was Jake? What had happened at the cabin? And why did Elena come back alone? The answers remained just out of reach, wrapped in shadows that threatened to consume the Martinez family. The perfect image was shattered, replaced by a haunting question no one dared to voice aloud. Was this disappearance hiding something far more deadly? As the night settled over the town, a chilling silence wrapped the Martinez home. Elena's secret was no longer safe, and the web of lies and betrayal was tightening around them all. What started as a quiet family mourning had spiraled into a nightmare, and the truth behind Jake's disappearance was about to come crashing down in the most horrifying way imaginable. The discovery of Jake's connection to the secluded cabin sent shockwaves through the investigation, transforming the case from a simple missing person to something far more ominous. The cabin was small, isolated deep in the woods beyond town limits, surrounded by thick trees that seemed to swallow any noise or light. It was the kind of place where secrets could easily be kept hidden, and now it had become the center of a dark mystery no one wanted to face. Detectives arrived with cautious determination, combing through every inch of the cabin and its surroundings. The inside was cluttered, with remnants of hurried visits, empty soda cans, scattered papers, and a half-finished notebook filled with strange scribble. But what caught their attention most was the evidence of two people having spent time there recently. Personal belongings linked to both Jake and Elena were found side by side, a worn baseball cap that Jake often wore and a delicate bracelet Elena never took off. The pieces fit together like a puzzle that revealed a secret no one had suspected. Surveillance footage already showed Jake and Elena arriving at the cabin together. What no one expected was the eerie silence that followed after Elena's return alone. Police questioned Elena again and again, but her answers were vague, filled with hesitation. She claimed she didn't know what had happened to Jake, insisting she left the cabin before dawn, yet the detective sensed there was much more beneath her calm voice, something she was desperate to hide. The small town began to crack under the pressure of the scandal. Elena, once admired as a dedicated teacher and mother, became the subject of hushed gossip and sideways glances. The neighborhood's warm smiles turned cold, replaced by suspicion and judgment. Carlos's face grew harder, his trust in his wife crumbling as the truth seemed to slip further from reach. Sophia, caught between heartbreak and betrayal, struggled to make sense of the woman she had always looked up to. Neighbors who once invited the Martinez family to gatherings now kept their distance. Rumors spread about what Elena and Jake had been doing in secret, painting dark pictures of forbidden meetings and dangerous liaisons. The town's sense of safety was shattered, replaced by an uneasy tension that lingered in the air. The scandal had taken root, and there was no going back. Detectives found something chilling beneath the surface, a hidden journal tucked behind a loose floorboard in the cabin. The pages were filled with Elena's handwriting, revealing thoughts and emotions she had never shared with anyone. The journal described a growing attraction to Jake, her loneliness, and the tangled web of guilt and desire that consumed her. It was a raw, haunting confession that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. But what disturbed investigators most was the sudden silence at the end of the journal. The last entries hinted at a confrontation, words filled with fear and desperation, suggesting that something had gone terribly wrong. The pages stopped abruptly, leaving a painful mystery hanging in the air. What had happened in that cabin during those final hours? The police expanded their search around the area, hoping to find clues that might explain Jake's disappearance. They combed the forest, checked nearby streams, and questioned anyone who might have seen something unusual, yet the answers were elusive, slipping away like shadows in the night. The deeper they dug, the more tangled the story became. Inside the Martinez home, the atmosphere grew heavier. Elena's once confident demeanor faded, replaced by a quiet, haunted presence. Carlos grew distant, his anger simmering beneath a calm exterior. Sophia, torn between love and betrayal, found herself caught in the middle of a storm she couldn't control. The family's foundation was crumbling, and no one knew if it could ever be repaired. As the investigation pressed forward, the chilling reality set in. This was no ordinary disappearance. The secret affair had unleashed a series of events darker and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The truth, buried deep within the walls of that isolated cabin, was waiting to be uncovered, and when it was, it would change everything. The town held its breath, waiting for the next revelation to break the silence. The perfect family image was gone, replaced by a haunting question that echoed in every corner: what really happened to Jake, and how far would someone go to keep their darkest secrets hidden? The moment the knife was found, the investigation took a terrifying turn. It was buried just off the trail leading to the cabin, hidden beneath a thick layer of leaves and dirt. A hiker stumbled upon it while exploring the woods, and what looked at first like an ordinary object quickly became the most crucial piece of evidence in the case. The metal gleamed faintly in the fading light, stained with something dark and disturbing. Forensic teams arrived swiftly, their faces grim as they carefully bagged the weapon and began testing for fingerprints and DNA. When the results came back, they shattered whatever hope remained that Jake's disappearance was a simple runaway case. The blood on the knife belonged to Jake. The evidence was undeniable. The chilling reality settled over the investigators. Jake had not only vanished, but he had likely been the victim of violence. Elena Martinez's world, and the entire community's, was rocked by this revelation. What had started as a secret affair now looked like something far more sinister, and all eyes turned toward Elena. Elena's demeanor changed the moment the news broke. Her calm facade crumbled into nervous glances and trembling hands. She avoided looking anyone in the eye, especially Carlos and Sophia. The police increased their scrutiny, interrogating her relentlessly about her whereabouts the night Jake disappeared. Her story wavered, details unclear and inconsistent, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Yet Elena held tightly to her silence about what truly happened at the cabin. Carlos, meanwhile, was torn between disbelief and suspicion. He had always trusted Elena, but now doubts gnawed at him like a relentless storm. Could the woman he loved be capable of something so terrible? He watched her closely, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse, but found only a hollow shell of the wife he once knew. Sophia, shattered by the loss and betrayal, refused to accept the worst but couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. Her heartbreak was a raw, painful thing that no teenager should have to endure. The community was divided. Some believed Elena was innocent, a victim of circumstance caught in a nightmare beyond her control. Others whispered about jealousy, rage and secrets too dark to reveal. The once close neighbors no longer gathered as before. The Martinez family's name was now tied to tragedy and scandal. School hallways buzzed with gossip, and friends drifted away from Sophia, unsure how to confront the storm surrounding her family. Detectives pieced together a timeline from phone records, surveillance footage and witness statements. It painted a disturbing picture of the last night at the cabin. Elena and Jake had arrived together as the sun dipped below the horizon. What happened after that was shrouded in mystery, but it was clear a confrontation had taken place. The knife was found nearby, but no sign of Jake's body was ever discovered. The question haunted everyone involved. How could someone vanish so completely after such violence? Elena's silence became her only shield. Despite mounting evidence, she refused to confess or explain what happened. The courtroom drama began to take shape, with prosecutors readying a case that would expose every secret, every betrayal. Elena's defense struggled to piece together an explanation, but the bloody knife was a heavy weight dragging the story toward a dark conclusion. Sophia's world was unraveling in slow motion. The pain of losing Jake was tangled with the horror of what she was beginning to suspect about her mother. Every memory of their family life took on new meaning, shadows replacing the warmth of happier times. She wrestled with confusion and anger, torn between love for her mother and the need for justice. Late at night, Elena sat alone in her room, the weight of everything crushing her. The knife hidden in the forest was a silent accusation she could neither escape nor deny. The truth was locked away somewhere deep inside her, but the cost of revealing it was terrifying. She knew that once the secret was out, nothing would ever be the same. As the investigation deepened, the line between victim and perpetrator blurred. The once clear roles within the Martinez family twisted into something unrecognizable. A mother's secret affair had led to something far darker, a brutal act that could never be undone. The chilling question lingered in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. Who had really wielded the knife, and why? The truth was closer than anyone thought, and when it emerged, it would change everything forever. The courtroom was packed with tension the day Elena Martinez took the stand. Every eye was fixed on her, the woman at the heart of a story that had gripped the town in fear and disbelief. Cameras flashed, and whispers filled the room as she walked in, her face pale but determined. For weeks the trial had laid bare a tangled web of secrets and lies, but now the moment had come to confront the truth. Elena's testimony was careful, measured. She described the days leading up to Jake's disappearance with a calm that masked the turmoil inside. She spoke about loneliness, the pressure of being a mother and wife trying to hold everything together. But when it came to the night at the cabin, her story began to crack. Her words faltered as she admitted to meeting Jake there, to moments of weakness and temptation. The jury listened, captivated by the raw honesty, but also disturbed by what it implied. Outside the courtroom, the town was divided. Some felt sympathy for Elena, seeing her as a flawed human caught in a tragic mistake. Others saw a woman who had crossed an unforgivable line, whose secrets had unleashed a nightmare. Carlos watched from the gallery, his expression unreadable, torn between betrayal and the lingering love he felt. Sophia sat beside him, tears streaming silently down her face, grappling with the mother she thought she knew. The prosecution painted a darker picture. They argued that Elena's affair with Jake was not just a lapse in judgment, but the catalyst for something far worse. They detailed how jealousy and fear had driven her to violence, how the knife found near the cabin was the weapon that ended Jake's life. Witnesses testified about heated arguments, about seeing Elena and Jake together in tense exchanges. Every piece of evidence built a case that seemed impossible to deny, but the defense fought back fiercely. They pointed to the absence of Jake's body, the lack of direct proof that Elena had actually harmed him. They suggested other possibilities. Maybe Jake had run away after the confrontation, maybe someone else was involved. Their goal was to plant doubt, to show that the truth was not as clear as the prosecution claimed. The courtroom became a battleground where every detail was scrutinized, every motive questioned. As the trial dragged on, new revelations emerged that shook the foundation of the case. A neighbor came forward with a startling claim. The night Jake disappeared, Carlos had been seen near the cabin area. This revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom and the town alike. Could the husband, long overlooked in the investigation, have played a role in the tragedy? The defense seized on this new lead, demanding a deeper look into Carlos's actions and motivations. The tension between Carlos and Elena became palpable. Their once united front was shattered.
replaced by accusations and bitter silence. Carlos refused to speak publicly, but his eyes betrayed a storm of emotions: anger, guilt, confusion. Sofia found herself caught between her parents, unsure who to trust as the layers of the story peeled away. The jury listened intently, caught in the middle of a story more complicated than anyone had imagined. Each twist deepened the mystery, every new fact raising more questions than answers. The public followed closely, the courtroom drama playing out like a dark thriller on the nightly news. At night, Elena's thoughts were haunted by what she had confessed, and what she had left unsaid. The weight of her secrets pressed down on her like a heavy fog. She wondered if the truth would ever be enough to free her, or if it would bury her forever beneath the shadows of that terrible night. As the trial approached its climax, the town braced for the verdict that would decide not just Elena's fate, but the future of a family torn apart by love, betrayal, and a murder that refused to be forgotten. The question lingered in every mind: who was truly responsible for Jake's disappearance, and would the truth finally come to light before it was too late?
The verdict hadn't even been read yet, but the Martinez family was already broken beyond recognition. The trial had had a mirror that exposed every fault line, every lie, betrayal, and wound that had been carefully buried beneath years of pretending. No matter what the jury decided, nothing could restore what had been lost. Carlos had moved out weeks before the trial began, unable to look at Elena without feeling a storm of rage and disbelief. He stayed silent throughout the proceedings, giving no interviews, no statement. His presence in the courtroom was cold and distant, a man watching the final collapse of the life he once helped build. Sofia barely spoke to either of her parents. The mother she had trusted had shattered her world, and her father had become a stranger, quiet, closed off, emotionally unreachable. Sofia existed in a kind of limbo, trapped between grief for Jake and the unbearable truth about her own family. The house they had once called home now sat in silence, untouched, almost preserved in the moment before everything went wrong. Elena's personal belongings remained untouched in her bedroom, her favorite books gathering dust on the shelves. Photographs of smiling faces still hung on the walls, images of birthdays, vacations, and celebrations, now tainted by the knowledge of what had been happening behind those frozen smiles. Sofia couldn't bear to step inside the house for long. Every room held memories that no longer felt real. In town, the whispers never stopped. Former friends avoided eye contact, neighbors crossed the street, and familiar places felt hostile. The scandal had stained everything. Elena's name was mentioned in hushed tones, and even those who sympathized with her couldn't bring themselves to speak up publicly. The school where she once taught replaced her quietly, pretending she had simply moved on. The students who once looked up to her now gossiped about her with morbid curiosity. And yet, beneath all the gossip and headlines, a deeper unease lingered. Jake's body had still not been found. The murder weapon had been linked to him, and the blood had sealed the belief that he was gone. But without a body there remained a ghost of a possibility, however small, that something else had happened. Some whispered that Jake had staged his disappearance, that he had manipulated Elena and vanished to start a new life. Others believed Elena had done the unthinkable and hidden his body so well that no one would ever find it. Sofia didn't know what to believe anymore. She had scoured Jake's messages, replayed his voice notes, and reread every letter and photo they had ever shared. None of it made sense in the context of what had unfolded. Jake had been loving, funny, and kind, or so she thought, but now she questioned everything. Was he really who she believed he was? Or had there always been something darker lurking beneath the surface? Elena, now confined to a detention facility while awaiting final sentencing, spent most of her time alone. She refused visitors, including Sofia. Whether it was shame, fear, or a need to protect her daughter from further pain, she gave no explanation. The woman who had once been the center of her family's world was now a ghost behind bars, lost in a storm of regret and secret. She spent her nights staring at the ceiling, haunted not just by what she had done but by what she hadn't said. There were still pieces of the truth she hadn't given up, pieces that could change everything if they ever came to light. The Martinez family, once admired for their unity and warmth, now existed only in memory. The truth had not set anyone free. It had exposed wounds that would never fully heal. It had destroyed trust, love, and the very meaning of family. And somewhere beneath all the rubble, the darkest part of the story still waited untouched, unseen and terrifying, in its silence. The case was nearly closed, but nothing felt complete. Everyone had lost something, some had lost everything, and in that hollow space between justice and mystery, the real question remained: would the full truth ever be known, or had it been buried forever along with the body that was never found? The courtroom was still as the jury filed in, their expressions unreadable. The room held its breath as the foreman stood, a single piece of paper trembling in his hand. The silence seemed to stretch forever before the verdict was finally spoken: guilty of manslaughter in the second degree. Not murder, not premeditated. The decision shocked many, but not Elena. She sat motionless, her eyes locked on some distant point no one else could see, as if she'd known this moment was inevitable. Elena Martinez was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The judge described her actions as reckless and fueled by emotional instability, leading to the irreversible loss of a young man's life. Though the charge was lighter than expected, the weight of what had happened still crushed everyone involved. The town's anger simmered beneath the surface, a mix of outrage and disbelief. But for the Martinez family, the legal outcome mattered less than what had already been destroyed. After the sentencing, Elena never looked back as she was led out of the courtroom. She didn't glance at Carlos or Sophia. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't want to see what her actions had done to them. The truth was, the punishment had begun long before the gavel fell. The real sentence was the silence, the separation, the destruction of a family that would never recover. Carlos left town shortly after. He sold the house, left his job, and moved 3 hours away to a quiet coastal town where no one knew his name. He told no one goodbye. He packed only what he needed and never returned. There were whispers about him. Some said he was running from guilt, others claimed he knew more than he ever admitted. But no one asked him directly. No one dared. He was a man hollowed out, moving through the world like a ghost. Sophia stayed behind. She couldn't bring herself to leave. Part of her needed to face the aftermath, to see the damage and understand it fully. She moved in with a friend's family and took a leave from school. Her once bright future was now clouded by the weight of unanswered questions. She visited the cabin once, walking the same trail her mother and Jake had taken. She stood where the knife was found, closed her eyes and waited. But no clarity came, just the rustle of trees and the sound of the wind brushing past her. Jake's body was never found. Despite multiple search efforts, cadaver dogs and community volunteers combing the area, he remained missing. This only deepened the mystery. Some believed Elena had hidden him in a place only she knew. Others speculated that someone else had helped. And then there were the persistent, haunting theories that maybe Jake had never died, that he had staged it all and escaped into a new life, leaving chaos behind. The uncertainty gnawed at everyone, but most painfully at Sophia. Without a body there was no closure, just questions that would never be answered. Years passed, but the story never faded. It became a case people spoke about in hushed voices, a cautionary tale of how quickly love could twist into destruction. Elena's name was etched into local history not as a teacher or mother, but as the woman whose secret love affair with her daughter's boyfriend ended in betrayal, blood and silence. From her prison cell, Elena wrote one letter a year to Sophia. She never asked for forgiveness, never gave full details. Each letter ended the same way: "There are things you don't know, things I can't write down. I only hope one day you'll understand." Sophia never wrote back. She kept the letters locked away unread. There was no neat ending, no final revelation. The truth, whatever it was, remained fractured, buried beneath shame, grief and time. But in the darkest parts of memory, in the unanswered spaces of their lives, the story lived on. Not as a lesson, not as just, but as a shadow that never lifted, a secret that even after everything, refused to die.